There is something almost embarrassing about it. You already know. You've known for a while. The relationship isn't working. The job is draining you. The version of the situation you've been holding on to stopped being real a long time ago. And yet, you haven't let go. Not fully. Not in the way that actually feels like release. You've had the conversations. You've made the decisions. You've told yourself, and maybe others, that you've moved on. But something remains. Some quiet part of you is still holding the door open, still checking, still waiting for something you can't quite name. And the harder question, the one most people don't ask, is why. Not why in the general sense. Not the version of the answer that sounds like, because it meant something to you, because change is hard, because humans are creatures of habit. Those things are true, but they're not the real reason. The real reason runs deeper than that. And until you understand it, really understand it, not just intellectually, but in the felt sense of recognition, the letting go doesn't happen. It just gets performed over and over without ever actually completing. Here is what most people believe about letting go. They believe it is an act of will, that if you want something badly enough to release, if you're strong enough, disciplined enough, evolved enough, you'll be able to do it. And if you can't, it means something is wrong with you, that you're weak, too attached, not healed enough yet. This is the story most people tell themselves about why they're still holding on. And it is almost entirely wrong, because letting go is not a decision. Or rather, it's not only a decision. You cannot simply choose to release something the way you choose to put down a glass. The mind doesn't work that way, and understanding why it doesn't is where the real answer begins. When you form an attachment to a person, to a relationship, to a version of your life, to a future you believed in, your brain doesn't just record the information, it reorganizes itself around it. The attachment becomes part of the structure, part of the way you process who you are, what you expect, what feels safe, and what feels like loss. So when that thing ends, or should end, you're not just losing the thing itself, you're losing the version of yourself that existed in relation to it. That is the part nobody talks about. When a relationship ends, people grieve the person. They grieve the shared history, the inside jokes, the particular warmth of that specific presence. All of that is real, and all of it deserves to be grieved. But underneath all of that is something else, something quieter and more disorienting. The loss of the self that existed inside the relationship. Because you were someone specific in that relationship. You had a role, a rhythm, a way of being that only existed in that context. And when the relationship ends, that version of you, the one who was a partner, a confidant, a person who was known in that particular way, doesn't have anywhere to go. It's not just that you miss them, it's that you don't quite know who you are without the context they provided. This is why people go back. Not because they've forgotten why things ended, not because they believe the problems will somehow resolve themselves this time, but because returning, even temporarily, even knowing it's not right, restores the self that went missing. It answers, for a moment, the question, who am I now? And this is true, not just for relationships. It's true for jobs you've outgrown but can't leave, for cities that no longer fit but feel like home, for beliefs you've intellectually abandoned but emotionally still live inside. Every attachment, when it runs deep enough, becomes part of your identity, and letting go of it isn't just a practical change. It's a kind of death, a small one, quiet without ceremony, of a version of yourself. No one tells you that the thing you're grieving isn't always the thing you think you're grieving. You think you're grieving the person, but you're also grieving who you were with them. You think you're grieving the job, but you're also grieving the version of your future that job represented. You think you're grieving a belief, but you're also grieving the safety of the world that belief made possible. And grief of that kind, identity grief, self-grief, doesn't respond to logic. You can know with complete clarity that something wasn't good for you. You can see it clearly, analyze it accurately, explain it to others with precision, and still feel the pull. Because the pull isn't about logic. It's about the nervous system's deep biological resistance to the loss of what feels like self. The brain is fundamentally a prediction machine. Its primary job is not to make you happy. It's to keep your inner model of reality accurate, to reduce the gap between what it expects and what it gets. When you've built your predictions around a person, a situation, a future, and then that person, situation, or future disappears, the brain experiences something close to error, a mismatch between what it was built to expect and what reality is now delivering. And it reaches, almost reflexively, for what would close that gap, for the familiar, for the thing that made sense, for the return to a world it already knows how to navigate. That reaching is what you feel as longing, as the inability to let go, as the part of you that keeps returning to the same thought, the same memory, the same possibility, even after you've decided rationally to stop. It's not weakness, it's not failure. It's the brain doing exactly what brains do. But understanding this doesn't make it easier in the obvious way. It makes it easier in a different way. It stops you from fighting the wrong thing. Most people, when they can't let go, fight the feeling. They tell themselves they shouldn't feel this way. They try to force the release through willpower, through cutting off, through replacing one thing with another before the grief has actually moved through. And none of it works, or it works temporarily on the surface, while the thing they haven't processed continues operating underneath. Jung wrote that what you resist persists, and this is exactly what he meant. The emotion doesn't go away because you've decided not to feel it. It goes underground. It finds other expressions. It shapes choices from beneath the level of awareness, the way roots beneath the surface move the ground above. The only way through is through, which sounds simple, and is, in practice, one of the hardest things a person can do. Because going through means allowing yourself to feel the full weight of what you're losing. Not just the obvious loss, the person, the future, the version of life that was supposed to happen, but the deeper loss, the loss of the self that existed in relation to all of it. It means sitting with the disorienting question, who am I now without this? Not to answer it immediately, not to rush to the next identity, the next relationship, the next project that will fill the space, but to actually feel the in-between, the shapelessness of the self in the time after something ends and before something new is formed. That in-between is the most uncomfortable place most people know. It feels like nothing, like suspension, like you're between chapters of a book that hasn't been written yet. And the pullback to what you've already let go of, or know you should, is strongest precisely here. Not because what you left behind was right, but because it was known. And known, however painful, feels safer than the formlessness of not yet knowing. So here is what letting go actually requires. It requires grieving not just the thing, but the self that existed around the thing. Letting that version of you have a proper ending, with acknowledgement, with grief, with the full recognition that something real is over. It requires tolerating the in-between, the uncomfortable suspension of not yet knowing who you are on the other side, without rushing to fill it, without reaching back to close the gap. And it requires, and this is the part that surprises people, a kind of trust. Not trust that things will work out, not the forced optimism of telling yourself it will be fine, but trust in your own capacity to form a new self, to reorganize, to become over time someone who belongs to a different chapter. Because you have done this before. Every significant change in your life has required this. And every time a new self emerged, not as a replacement for the old one, but as a continuation. The grief didn't last forever. The formlessness resolved. The person you became on the other side was real. The reason you can't let go isn't that you're too attached. It isn't weakness or failure or a lack of healing. It's that you're a human being who built yourself in part around something. And losing that something is losing a part of the architecture of yourself. That is not a problem to be solved. It's a process to be moved through. You don't need to let go all at once. You don't need to feel nothing. You don't need to have moved on before you've actually moved through. What you need, what actually works, even when nothing else has, is to stop fighting the feeling and start understanding what it's carrying. Because the thing you can't release is holding something on your behalf. It's keeping alive a version of yourself, a future, a sense of who you are in the world. And until that version has been properly honoured, properly grieved, it won't let you go any more than you can let it go. Grief is not the enemy of release. It's the path to it. You don't let go by deciding not to hold. You let go by fully, honestly, feeling what it meant that you held. And on the other side of that, not immediately, not without difficulty, you find that your hands are finally open. If something in this video names something you've been carrying, share it. Think of one person you know who is still holding something they know they should release. Send it to them without explanation. They'll understand why. Leave a comment below. Tell me what you haven't been able to let go of and what you think it's been holding for you. I'll see you in the next one.